Okay, so we're going to start by talking about phrases and clauses. What are they? Well, phrases, if we take this sentence, the black cat ate the mouse in the kitchen, that's a rather strange way of reading it because we, of course, would put those words into groups in the sentence. The black cat ate the mouse in the kitchen would probably be the way you would group them. So those groups of words, the black cat, they're phrases, and even if they only consist of one word like ate, we still call it a phrase. And if we can substitute a single word for a string of words, a group of words, then the string is probably a phrase. So the black cat, we could say she ate the mouse, it, in the kitchen, there. Okay, so that's a test for a phrase. Now, phrases can be embedded in other phrases. So if you take the sentence time flies like an arrow, we can think of like an arrow as a phrase describing how time flies, but an arrow is also a phrase that fits in the larger phrase like an arrow. However, it doesn't always work like that. So if you take the other sentence, fruit flies like a banana, there's no embedding there. Fruit flies are the little flies that like bananas. So we get different phrase types: noun phrases, verb phrases, adjective phrases, adverbial phrases, and prepositional phrases. So if we take this sentence, J.K. Rowling, noun phrase, has revealed, verb phrase, she, noun phrase, could write, verb phrase, more books, noun phrase, in the Harry Potter series, prepositional phrase. Now, prepositional phrases always begin with the preposition, in this case. So just pause the video and see if you can work out how to decide what phrases they are in the other sentences. Okay, so we've got number 2, that white chocolate, noun phrase, is, verb phrase, too sweet, adjective phrase. The Milliband's, noun phrase, often, adverbial phrase, used to go, verb phrase, to the cinema, prepositional phrase, together, adverbial phrase. Suddenly, adverbial phrase, the door, noun phrase, slammed, verb phrase, and this is a tricky one because you may be tempted to call shut an adverbial phrase, and it would be if it was something like the door slammed noisily, that would tell us how it slammed, but in this case the door slammed and it became shut, so shut describes the door rather than the slamming, so it's actually an adjective phrase. Okay, so clauses are composed of phrases, but the clause must contain a verb phrase. So walking to work would count as a clause because walking would be a verb phrase, but after 4 o'clock is not a clause. Clauses can be independent or dependent. In other words, they can stand on their own. So you can go could stand on its own as a sentence, but if you want cannot stand on its own, so it's dependent. So sometimes we say independent dependent or main subordinate, different terminologies for the same thing. So form is what the constituents, the words and phrases are. So we talk about nouns or a noun phrase, a verb, an adverb. So that's the form, but we can also talk about functions within the clause. So function is what those constituents do. So subject, object, complement, etc. So the book was on the shelf. The book is a noun phrase, that's its form, but it functions as the subject in that sentence. So the main functions we'll talk about: subject, predicate, verb, object, complement, adverbial or adjunct, and we sometimes talk about those as elements, clause elements. So just a diagram to illustrate that. If we take the sentence at the bottom, the old cat was chasing the mouse around the room, we can identify each word by its word class, determiner, adjective, noun, auxiliary verb, etc. And we can group those words into phrases: noun phrase, verb phrase, noun phrase, and prepositional phrase. And then we can look in red at the functions, the clause elements. So the old cat is the subject, was chasing is the verb, the mouse is the object, and around the room is an adverbial or adjunct. And the highest level, we can say that subject and predicate is the way to divide a sentence. So predicate is basically what's not the subject.